Hello YouTube, I am back again to talk about SpongeBob, and this time I wanted to highlight one of my favorite new additions of modern SpongeBob, and that would be the formation of the Gal Pals, which is the friendship between Sandy, Karen, Mrs. Puff, and later Pearl. These four characters have been a part of SpongeBob from the beginning, and they are the only female characters who have been a constant throughout the show. I'll first establish the history of the Gal Pals and their episodes, and then I'll discuss why I appreciate the Gal Pals so much. We first got the Gal Pals in season 11's Girls' Night Out, where it was Sandy calling up Karen and Mrs. Puff to go celebrate the great week she's had, and they went out to a cafe and were drinking on coffee and catching up, just like an established friend group, teasing that they've been friends like this forever. Sandy is kind of the core of the group, which makes sense. She's the most established of all four of the Gal Pal characters. She comes into their coffee meetup and she is happy, she's very positive. But Karen and Mrs. Puff, they are exhausted from Karen dealing with Plankton and Mrs. Puff dealing with SpongeBob. We all know about the relationship those characters have with each other, and it's often Karen having to reel in Plankton and Mrs. Puff fighting for her life, trying to teach SpongeBob to drive, and SpongeBob just cannot drive. And Sandy proposes that they go out and they pull pranks. It'll make them feel better. So the episode consists of them going to prank Plankton first. They dress up as Mr. Krabs and pretend they're giving Plankton the formula. Very funny. Everything went all right. Then it was off to SpongeBob, and they were making SpongeBob believe that he got his driver's license and that he was driving a boat around. This quickly went sideways, and SpongeBob was let loose, so it became a rescue mission. Mrs. Puff did show some of her more modern rage towards SpongeBob, but the Gal Pals reeled her in, as good friends do, and they all were very sympathetic and wanted to save SpongeBob. It was very fun, very friendly pranks, and SpongeBob was happy he got pranked, cheering that he loves pranks. It was a happy ending. And this episode mostly just established the Gal Pals. They love them some coffee. They are a good shoulder to lean on as they go through the troubles of life, and they also celebrate the successes in life. And establishing that they love a good prank. It was a great way to introduce the Gal Pals. And then in season 12, we got A Cabin in the Kelp. This was the next big follow-up episode for the Gal Pals, and this episode wanted to integrate Pearl into the fold. I don't really think they needed to add Pearl because the trio was working fine, and Pearl is definitely the outlier of the four female characters, being a teenager while the others are adults. But giving Pearl her own episode to get worked into the fold, that works well too. If you want to have all the girls in there, I respect that decision, and they give Pearl the time to work her way into the fold through this episode. Unnecessary, but it's an appreciated addition. I'm glad Pearl wasn't left out, but I would have understood if she was. The episode starts with the Gal Pals. They're packing up for a trip to Kelp Forest. They're gonna go camping at a cabin. This is their way to officially induct Pearl into the Gal Pals. Pearl knows the Gal Pals have a reputation for pranking, so she is coming armed and ready. She is bringing SpongeBob along, and they've planned a way to prank the Gal Pals before the Gal Pals can prank her. We make it to the cabin, there's a few hiccups along the way, SpongeBob gets lost, and it's finally time to induct Pearl. The Gal Pals do this by giving her a necklace that belongs to Flibberty Gibbet. They tease that Flibberty Gibbet was a former member of the Gal Pals. We're getting some Gal Pals lore, okay. Pearl immediately is like, oh, this is part of a prank, and they all start laughing, but then the Gal Pals are like, no, it's true. We don't know what to believe at this point in the episode. Are they just making it up to get at Pearl? Is there some truth to it? Whatever. All of a sudden, somebody appears out of the woods. Pearl thought it was going to be SpongeBob doing her prank at first, but no, it was some random lady, and all four of the gal pals assume that it is Flibbertigibbet, and they freak out. What timing it was, because SpongeBob also finds his way to the camp at that same time. He goes in the cabin, and he's in there with Flibbertigibbet, who they think is on a revenge spree. And it becomes a rescue mission to save SpongeBob. They bust in there, and it's just some random sales lady getting SpongeBob some pine cones on a stick. All that for nothing. But that was enough to get Pearl in the group. They're all good now. But it's not over yet, because the real Flibbertigibbet appears in the flesh. And they all run off before she can even get a word in. And Flibbertigibbet says that she forgives them, but they were already gone, so guess we'll never know. It was a very fun, funny episode. Both these episodes, just delightful. So much positivity in them. You love the friendships that are there. What I love about the Gal Pals is that it really gives the female characters something to do. Now, Sandy, she probably needed the Gal Pals the least out of all four of these characters because she's the biggest name in SpongeBob, but I still think it does a lot in her favor. It shows that she has friends and a social life outside of SpongeBob and Patrick. And I think having Sandy sort of be the head of the team and being a positive force to balance out Karen and Mrs. Puff, who are stuck with a lot of negativity just in how their characters have been created, it really works, and Sandy is a nice balance. And I think the Gal Pals work great because Sandy's there. I think the Gal Pals benefits Karen and Mrs. Puff the most out of anybody. Karen has always just been the wife of Plankton. Plankton made her. She's usually just seen nagging Plankton about his bad ideas. She's always shown being right. And I will say, although modern SpongeBob has been giving her more and more of her own agency as her own character, I think the Gal Pals is what really sealed the deal. And it was like, oh, so she really does have stuff going on besides Plankton. It started out as her just complaining about Plankton, but that was just setting up the group. Of course, she's going to talk about her life in the group. That's her way in. But once she's in the group, we get to see her having fun, letting loose, pranking. She has a Gal Pal screen on her monitor that she loves to flash. And Karen gets to be a comedic force, and she gets to let loose more than she ever has. I love seeing Karen get to be the fun character that she deserves to be. And I think Karen, in particular, is one of my favorite SpongeBob characters, always has been. And I just love what the Gal Pals offers to her. Now, Mrs. Puff, on the other hand, she started off the show pretty friendly, but as time has gone on and on, she's gotten more unhinged, I would say, especially with SpongeBob still not getting his driver's license. And she's even developed a bit of a mean streak where she just wants SpongeBob to suffer sometimes. I love what the Gal Pals first episode did, and showing that the Gal Pals are able to reel her back and stop her from unleashing on SpongeBob too far. It was like correcting an error we've seen in Miss Puff in the past. I do love Mrs. Puff, but I think she's had a lot of episodes that don't paint her in the best light. And I think the Gal Pals, it's a great grounding force for her, where we might not see her have much going on beforehand other than just SpongeBob. Now we're like, oh, no, Mrs. Puff has some stuff going on. She's got these Gal Pals. She's also got her relationship with Mr. Krabs now, which is canon. But we really do get to see Mrs. Puff let loose a little bit and have fun. That's a nice change instead of just suffering. Now, Mrs. Puff has some funny moments suffering, but balance. Balance is key. And I think the Gal Pals, it really allows Karen and Mrs. Puff to show off their fun sides, and it makes them more well-rounded characters. So while before we did have Karen and Mrs. Puff kind of having fun sides with their relationships to Plankton and Mr. Krabs. I think it's nice to see them have it with the girls, because not everything needs to revolve around the guys. Now, Pearl, I think Pearl as a character didn't need it, but this gives her something else to do. I think there's a lot of untapped potential with Pearl as a character. I think Pearl has some of the more enjoyable episodes of SpongeBob for me, her focus episodes. I love to see Pearl letting loose and having fun. And I think her brand of fun balances out with the Gal Pals quite well. And I love her positive energy. I think Sandy and Pearl, they're kind of positive, and I would say Karen and Mrs. Puff, they lean more negative. So it's like a nice half and half now. And I just love to see Pearl getting any form of relevancy, really. Anytime I see Pearl on the screen, she's always a delight. I love Pearl. So underrated, so underutilized, and Gal Pal, it's another way to utilize her. Props to the writers. They found a way to work a teenager in with a group of adult women and make it natural. The chemistry is absolutely there with the Gal Pals. These characters work off of each other so well, and I'm glad that they gave it the time to space out Pearl coming into the mix, not with the adults. I think that was a great choice. I love to see all four of these characters strong on their own right. This just doubles down on their status in the SpongeBob world and props them up even more, giving them something else to do. I love it. The Gal Pals, I hope we get another episode. It's been 2 seasons now. They've had appearances, but I want the Gal Pals to get some shine on their own. Now, could they get another member? I think cut it off. We have all 4 of the iconic female characters in the mix. If they were gonna add another character, I think it would be fun to bring back Flibberty Gibbet. It would be funny. It would. She has great character design just in her cameo appearance. I'd love to see what they do with her. But I don't want her to last for more than an episode. I would like to just keep it to this core. Now, maybe Narlene. They've worked Narlene into the fold. She's a mainstay on Camp Coral. I enjoy her there. She's had a few SpongeBob episodes. They've been fun. She's had dynamics with Sandy and Pearl. I don't think she's had any really with Karen and Mrs. Puff. I think if they're gonna bring anybody in the mix, Narlene would be a good candidate. Maybe Mindy. I'd love to see Mindy return to SpongeBob after the movie. I don't think we're ever gonna get that, but if the Gal Pals is a way to bring her back, yes, please. I'll take Mindy however I can get her. What a lovely character. But I think let's just cap it at this 4 for now. I'd love to see them pull off some more pranks. What if they opened their own cafe together? That could be fun. There's so many options with this, and I'm happy to see it. Maybe a girls' night versus a guys' night. Something give me more. I want the Gal Pals. Give me more Gal Pals. Honestly, I could do full videos on all 4 of the Gal Pals independently. But, I mean, I will definitely talk more about SpongeBob in future. I just had to get some Gal Pal love out there. So, until next time, bye.